What's good, guys? Fantasy Joe back here with my running back rankings. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button before you go any farther. If you want to bring home that fantasy football championship, have that edge that your league mates don't have, all that up-to-date information, those values, sleepers, busts, everything you need to know to go into your draft to dominate, to win that championship this season, just hit that subscribe button. It's that simple. If you guys have any questions or comments, drop them in the comment section down below. Dropped a mock draft yesterday and every Monday, so check those out in the channel. Sleeper videos already out, as well as some players I'm targeting in every draft. Check out wide receiver rankings, which dropped yesterday. And if you guys want running back rankings part 2, let me know, and I will drop those as well. Let's dive into our number 1 running back without further, not Saquon Barkley. And this one's not much of a surprise. Some people do have Bijan at number 1, who we will talk about here in a moment. But let me break down my ranking for Saquon Barkley. So 16 games last year, he had over 2,000 rushing yards. Absolutely incredible performance for him. 5.8 yards a carry, absolutely ridiculous. 125 yards a game. Caught 33 balls, good for 8.4 a catch, which is great efficiency numbers as well. The only real knock on Saquon is he's not, as prolific as a pass catcher as some of these other guys inside the top 5. But the offensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles is absolutely incredible, and I see a lot of the cases against Saquon Barkley are, 482 touches this last season, including playoffs, is a lot. 2,000 yards rushers usually lose over 500 yards rushing heading into their next season, but of course they will. It's very hard to rush for 2,000. Only 8 or 9 players have ever done in NFL history, and the next season guys are bound to be, worse statistically, coming off one of the greatest seasons of all time. But if you assume Saquon Barkley has 300 carries flat, so he loses 45 carries, he goes from 5.8 yards to 4.6 yards a carry, which I don't think he will even go that low with how good this Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is. He'd still have 1,380 rushing yards. Add in those passing numbers, he's close to 1,600 yards from scrimmage and a double-digit touchdown score. And again, I don't think 4.6 is within Saquon's realm of possibility unless a bunch of injuries happen to the offensive line. I think he's going to be close to that 5 yards a carry. This offensive line is going to open up holes for him that are just absolutely huge. We saw last year you could run a truck through some of those holes, and that's why I've got Saquon number 1. When you look at the offense as a whole, stud quarterback in Jalen Hurts, great pass catchers around him. There's really no holes on that offense in general, and even though he might not catch as many passes, I have no questions about the offense, and the offensive line is one of the best in football. So that's why I have Saquon Barkley at number 1. Coming up at number 2, we got Bijan Robinson, the Atlanta running back. Only in his 3rd season, not Atlanta. Bijan Robinson. And some people do have him number 1, reason being he is younger than Saquon Barkley. The reason that I have him second, even factoring in age, and he is a more prolific pass catcher than Saquon Barkley is mainly just because there are still a lot of question marks about the offense. For Bijan to pay off at number 1, number 2 running back value, Michael Penix needs to be a good player. Their offense needs to go out there and be able to score consistently for him to be able to hit, the heights that we are hoping for him to. But I think Michael Penix is going to be a pretty good quarterback. I think they're going to put a lot on Bijan Robinson. He's one of the best runners in the league. They've got a top 10 offensive line. And quarterback is a question mark, but last year, Marcus Mariota, that's a throwback to a few years ago. But Kirk Cousins wasn't particularly good, and he still had a dynamic season, he being Bijan, with 1,456 yards, 14 touchdowns on the ground, catching 61 balls. And I think you could see this receiving touchdown number go up this upcoming season. Saw him at 4 the year before. So I think he's a double-digit touchdown score on the ground. He's going to catch 50-plus, 60-plus passes, which is fantastic. And I think even that yards per catch number as well could increase a little bit with Michael Penix and this offense just being better than they were in the previous season. This next running back up, I've got Jahymr Gibbs. Last year was absolutely incredible for Gibbs, and even though he's not, he splits work in his backfield, which a lot of these top running backs really don't share that combination really. Look at this last season. Basically 2,000 yards from scrimmage, just about 20 touchdowns, 250 carries is a little inflated. I don't think he'll hit quite that number. But 52 receptions in the passing game. This is a number that I think goes up this year. I just think they're going to have more need to throw a running back in second halves of football games than they did last year, just because they were so dynamic in all facets of the ball, except for really defense over the second half of the season. But I just think they'll take a step back, losing both offensive coordinators. I still think they're a 12-win football team, something like that probably. But yeah, I just think that Jahymr Gibbs is going to have to catch a few more touchdowns. Maybe his touchdown efficiency probably does come down, but he's just an electric ball carrier. He's going to get the ball close to 300 times, which is more than enough for a player like him to be extremely efficient and dynamic for fantasy football. We saw him average 5.6 yards per carry last year, 5.5 on his career. And over 8 yards a catch in the passing game. And last year, 9.9. I think he's going to be closer to that 9-8 number than he was 6 in year one. I think that was a lot of a learning curve. But he's a guy who's going to go out there. He's going to score, 14, 15 touchdowns. He's going to be dynamic in all aspects of the game and is just a threat the entire time he's got the ball in his hands. And the Detroit Lions offensive line, even though they're not as good as they were last year, they are still a good unit, borderline top 10. All right. Next running back we have up, this one, Christian McCaffrey. People are split on him. Honestly, originally I did have him even ahead of Gibbs, but I just think there's so much safety to Jahymr Gibbs that I'm just willing to lock him in, just being so young and so many of the dynamic offenses, his pass catching numbers going up, things like that. But basically the case with Christian McCaffrey is quite simple. Any running back, any player in fantasy football can be injured. It could happen to anybody. Football is a 100% injury rate sport. It's when, it's not if. And if Christian McCaffrey goes out there and is healthy for 15, 16 games next year, something like that, doesn't miss a prolonged chunk of the season, and you draft him, he's one of the few players that gives you close to a 50% chance of playing in your championship game by the end of the season just by having him on your roster if he's healthy. Look at some of these numbers. So 2 years ago, 1,459 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns, caught 67 passes, 7 receiving touchdowns, the RB1. His last healthy season as well, he was also finished as the RB1 by a mile. This year, actually, I don't know if he did, but I was referring to his last year in Carolina. He's RB1 by a big chunk. This year, he was very close if he wasn't. But basically, if he's healthy, he's going to go down as the RB1. And it's just that payoff is worthy of a first-round pick to me, especially in fantasy football. You're not playing to not come in last. You're playing to come in first. You're not playing to come in third. You're trying to go out there, give your team enough upside to bring home the championship. And sure, he's got a little bit more risk than some of these other players, but he also has a heck of a lot more ceiling, and that's worthy of a top 5 selection to me in Christian McCaffrey. I just can't spell any of these guys' names right the first time. Next up, we've got Derrick Henry. Another guy that doesn't really catch a lot of passes in this top 5, but when you go out there and you can rush for 2,000 yards or close to pretty consistently, it's worth it. Obviously, he had the 2,000 yards when he was in Tennessee, 1,900 this last year, good for 16 rushing touchdowns. Maybe that number does come down a little bit this year in Baltimore, but I still think with how good that offense is, he's good for 12, 13 touchdowns, so not a ton of regression there. Let's say this 1,900 yards come down to 1,500, 1,600. Still a fantastic year for him. And I'm just betting on him continuing to be a freak. Mainly, he hasn't slowed down at all. 5.9 yards an attempt is absolutely ridiculous this last year. Having Lamar Jackson, I think, helps keep those defenses honest. So I'm going to continue to bet on Derrick Henry. I think he's worthy of a first-round pick still, just with how good his touchdown upside is. And yeah, I'm just all over him with this type of volume, how good this offense is, and I'm not worried about the pass-catching numbers or the age. Sure, the age is, it's a risk, but when you're betting on a guy who just hasn't fallen off really yet, it's this 5.9 goes to 4.8, you could still be very happy with Derrick Henry, even if he drops by over a yard per carry. And that's kind of things that I look at when you're projecting somebody to start to decline, is what's a realistic situation, and would you still be happy with them in that situation. So next up, we've got Ashton Jeanty. And we're going to pull his stats up over here just because he's a college football player this last season, rookie coming into the league. But his numbers in college, absolutely ridiculous. 6.1 yards a carry 2 years ago, 2,600 rushing yards this last year, 29 touchdowns, 185 yards a game, 9.9 yards a reception, 23 passes this last year, 43 the year before, so he's a good pass catching back. Then you combine this with the draft capital that the Las Vegas Raiders went out there and invested into him. That's why he's my number 6 running back. I think you can book him for 300-plus carries. I think he's going to get 50-plus receptions. So you're looking at 350-plus touchback. I think he could easily go over some of those numbers. Pete Carroll offense, they're going to run the ball. He's a dynamic player. They need him. Even with, they've made some adjustments to offense. Brock Bowers, stud last year. They bring in Geno Smith. They have Jacoby Myers. The offensive line isn't necessarily horrible. But I think the offense around him is probably what'll hold him back from being maybe the RB1. Obviously, if he's just so different, if he's Saquon Barkley levels good his rookie year, which I think that's the last guy I think that was close to his level of talent that's worthy of comparing Achane Gentry to. I think he's better than Bijan and Breece Hall. A lot of these guys have come out in recent years. I would probably go back to Saquon Barkley, Todd Gurley, if you take away some of the injury risks that he had at that time. I think those are the players that are comparable to him. I think he's definitely worthy of a first-round pick to me. This next player up finishes the RB5 last year. It's Josh Jacobs. And this last year, he was extremely good on the ground as far as touchdowns go the second half of the season. I believe he had 15 touchdowns on the year. This will tell me, yes, 15 on the ground, over 300 carries, 4.4 a carry. A lot of his yards per contact, or a lot of his yards per rush were after contact, which kind of shows you the offensive line wasn't doing him a ton of favors in the run game. But the Packers have actually made some investments in the offensive line. They went out and paid a guard close to $80 million. Then they signed another tackle/guard player in round 2. They have a first-round pick at guard who's going to become healthy this year from the year previous. So they've got a lot of reinforcements as well as depth on this offensive line that makes me think that it'll be even better this upcoming season. Now, does he go out there and have 15 touchdowns? Does he have 300 carries with how LaFleur usually likes to split the work up amongst his backs? Probably not, but I still think this carry number is going to be north of 260. I think he's going to catch 30, 40 passes. I think he'll be north of 35, so 35 to 45 passes. And I just still think he's going to be good for football. And I just think this 4.4 number, to me, can go up for him if this offensive line gets better, and I think that they will. Saw him average 4.9 over a 340 carry season with a much worse offensive line where they were keying all on him in Las Vegas. So I think those things are well within the realm of possibility for him. And I think the touchdown numbers, he could easily do 15 again when you look how slow he started the first half of the year, and in his offense getting better. I don't think, if the offense is better this next year, they could throw more passing touchdowns. So you could still have the same amount of rushing touchdowns. I think all those things are very possible, especially if you consider Jordan Love was playing a big part of the year last year banged up. I think there are a lot of things to like about Josh Jacobs. I just think he's a very safe player with where he's going in round 2 of drafts right now. And this next one may be a little bit of a surprise. I think I've got him a little higher than some people do. And it is a bit of a rejection on Jonathan Taylor, who's my next player up. But let me explain some of my thinking with Jonathan Taylor. So this last year, 1,431 rushing yards in only 14 games, 102 yards a game, similar to what he did when he was the RB1. Obviously, the touchdowns are a little bit different. But 11 is nothing to, is a good number when you only played 14 games. You played on a team that's as bad as the Colts were this last year. But let me draw your attention to something. This last year, pass catching wise, 28, 19, 18. Those are abysmal numbers, and he does get a ton of volume on the ground to make up for it. But what I think could really increase for him is this receptions number. If Daniel Jones is the starting quarterback for the majority of the season, I think there's a great chance of him catching close to 40 passes with an increase in checkdowns going from an Anthony Richardson, inexperienced mobile quarterback who likes to rely on his legs, to a Daniel Jones who can certainly run but is a little bit more used to an NFL system where you hit those checkdowns, those running backs, especially elite guys like Jonathan Taylor, get you a ton of yak after they catch, help boost those numbers, move the chains, all of those type of things. And if he goes out there and catches 40 passes next year and he has the same type of rushing involvement, which I do expect him to be the backbone of this offense and be leaned on 20-plus attempts a game, he's going to be dynamic for fantasy football, which is how good of a player he is, the offensive line there, and that increased role in the passing game. So that's why I've got Jonathan Taylor a little bit higher. I just think that's really going to help him with Daniel Jones being who I project to be their starting quarterback. All right, next up we've got Achane, another really good player. He caught 78 passes this last season. But the reason, honestly, I've got him a little bit lower on the list, I usually love drafting pass-catching running backs with that much pass game involvement. I do really like him for this upcoming season. But some of the main things are just I'm worried about the Miami Dolphins offense in general. He is a smaller back who's dealt with injuries at multiple levels at 5'9", 188. Tua also worries me. If Tua goes down, I think the offense will be just so much worse. It brings down his touchdown upside dramatically. The one thing that I will point out, Zach Wilson, their backup, when he was in New York, Breece Hall was putting up some of his best reception seasons, finished as RB3 because of his reception work. So that makes me think it will be a little bit safer if Tua goes down, that pass-catching involvement continues with Zach Wilson. But it worries me about the offensive efficiency overall and being tied into Achane's injury history as well as Tua's. It's just that combination that really worries me and has me put him down a little bit lower. But still, he's my RB9. And with his pass catching involvement, as long as him and Tua are healthy, he's probably a top 5 running back rest of season, top 7, something like that. You can lock and load him just with that pass catching involvement. It's going to be tough for a lot of other players to outscore him on a weekly basis. Moving on to my number 10 running back, I've got Bucky Irving, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now let's go look at Bucky's stats. He was really good this last year, and I think he's going to have another good season. For me, the reason I have him a little bit lower than most people is just when you talk about some guys like Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, they're just locked into so much passing game involvement so much volume that I'm willing to take some of them over some of these guys. I just feel like he's a little bit more, though Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs are a little bit more solidified into a workhorse role in their offense. I do think Bucky Irving's going to be the one this year, but I do think Rachaad White's still going to be involved. He finishes a top 24 running back this last season, even with how good Bucky was. 207 yards for 1,132. That's extremely efficient. 5.4 a carry is great. 8.3 in the passing game as well, and he caught a good number of passes. I do think both of these numbers go up, but maybe we see some of those efficiency numbers come down a little bit. We usually see basket a little bit less efficient as their volume increases, which does make sense. But I do think he's a locked and loaded stud who's going to be more involved in his offense, plays in a good offense. So yeah, he's a bona fide running back 1 to me and somebody that I do like drafting, just like a few guys ahead of him. All right, next running back up, I've got Chase Brown on my list. He's a guy over the second half of the season was absolutely incredible. I think he finishes a RB5 or 6 in points per game over the second half of the season once he got that starter role. And we can see down here, 229 carries, 990 rushing yards, 14 attempts a game, and that's factoring in that slow start where he really wasn't the guy. It was more of Zach Moss. Very involved in the passing game as well. 54 catches, and again, wasn't really the guy the entire year. He could easily catch 60, 70 passes in this role. He's got elite speed. He's in a good offense that needs to score. He's a lead dog. He should easily hit 1,000 yards rushing next year as long as he's healthy. Catch 60, 70 passes. You're talking about an absolute stud running back. Like I said, great offense, great quarterback. Offensive line might not be great, but his long speed really helps him profile really well for me. And with how many passes he was catching over the second half of the season, just a guy you can lock in and load as an RB1. And you can get this guy in like round 3 right now of drafts. And I absolutely love that value. Okay, number 12, we've got Kyren Williams. I do think he's a little bit safer than a Bucky Irving, a Chase Brown, maybe even a Devon Achane, although I would take all those guys over him. I don't think his ceiling is as high, but I do think he's got a great deal of Kyren. I'll get it one of these days. Okay, here we go. But he's a guy locked in workhorse for his offense. That's the big thing. So 316 carries this last year, good for 19.8 a game, averaged 19 the year before. The number I would point out, 4.1 yards an attempt. He's not super efficient. I don't really expect that to go up very much. I bet, especially if he gets 300 carries, I think he'll be around 4 to 4.4 a carry at max. I just don't think he's that good of a runner at the NFL level. He doesn't break off long runs. Let's see, his longest last year was 30 yards. So, yeah. 5.4 yards a catch is pretty abysmal, and then when you compare that to 6.4 the year before, so he's involved in the passing game. He doesn't do a whole lot with it, though. So you're mainly relying on these rushing touchdowns, which I do think he's going to be, like I said, lead back again. He's going to get a lot of volume. He's going to have a great chance at touchdown each and every week. So there's a lot of safety to his profile. I just don't see a lot of upside, and I would expect his yards rushing per game to go down. His pass catching numbers, I think, will stay pretty similar, maybe be a little bit more efficient. But again, I just don't expect him to post an 8-yard per reception season based on what we've kind of seen from him, averaging 6.2 for his career. I think he'll be right around there, let's say 6.5 a catch. Again, nothing to write home about, and you're really depending on those touchdowns. Although he is a workhorse, I think he's a guy who finishes an RB1, just probably RB7 to 12, somewhere in that range, and just doesn't give you super excited. But again, if you start with 2 wide receivers, you get Kyren Williams as your RB1, a guy that's going to go out there and give you close to 100 yards from scrimmage a game and have a great chance at a touchdown. There's a lot worse things you could do. And again, I really like the stability that he gives you compared to some of these other guys at this point in the draft. If you guys have made it to this point in the video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and if you have any questions or comments, drop them in the comment section down below. Check out wide receiver rankings, and let me know if you guys want another running back rankings video. Like this video for part 2 and put it in the comment section down below. I'll come out my top 24 running backs. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys next time.